Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, dear participants. Magister Opitz, thank you for the warm welcome. And I, on my side, of course, for the organizers, would like to welcome you. Magister Opitz, it was admirable. Your research was great. It is obvious why the university needed to retain you with your IT experience, the business background, because one couldn't have better described what the issues at hand are than you did. Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you will think, why just another, if that works. No? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, technique is, even if you have studied informatics, it's not easy at the beginning. So we try to be the first of our kind. We communicate with our audience. That's why we have a hashtag. So if you, and I encourage you, of course, post anything, please use our hashtag ReMeP 2019 so that the community can follow wherever it is. It was already mentioned we had a very good reception for our idea, for this concept. Erich Schweighofer and myself, we attended Zurich's 2018, where we spontaneously sort of created sort of this concept in a sort of discussion, and we pushed it out. I was wondering with the idea for another 10 years. I had been in law management for a long time. 10 years ago, with a group of partners, we decided to set up a smaller firm, and in parallel, I started to run a legal informatics center, a tech center, where we have 18 servers and do all sorts of services around legal, rather from the technical and computer side. It was obvious when we test one or the other application that people in the market don't know what's out there. A lot of very expensive tools are being offered and discussed. Nobody can afford them, and the cheap tools nobody knows. And there is a missing link between the various areas of offerings. And likewise, people don't know what's happening on the research side. So very often you get products offered that solve a particular problem, sort documents, find a clause somewhere, manage discovery or similar processes. But nobody, for example, thinks about why don't we manage a legal process? Why don't we manage a loan agreement from its inception, term sheet creation, execution, management of the loan, watching out for payments, repayments, which we could do, for example, on a blockchain, down to the end of repayment and releasing security. Why isn't anybody, for example, looking at this sort of processes? That is because we don't interact. Lawyers are in a silo. Ms. Opitz made it very clear. Law firms are late adopters. At the moment, law firms think if they are driving legal innovation on the technical side, they would then still command the market, which, dear friends, it will not happen for a simple reason. None of you has more than 0.something% of a market share, and we all know that doesn't scale. Informatics need to scale, and you scale with 10, 15, 20, 30%, but not with 0-something. So what we need is interaction, and that is why we wanted to bring the communities together, because only if you bring the communities together, you will have an evolving environment and problems will get solved. And informatics works different than the law. In the law, you are protective, you protect your knowledge, you make sure it doesn't go out there. You could get copied, somebody else could hijack your client or so. Informatics works differently, right? If you look in successful environments, look into AI, then if you share technologies, other pick up of them, they pick up on what others do, and that's how informatics application evolve. That's what we need in legal informatics as well. Now we have 140 registered participants. I know some are coming today, some are coming tomorrow. We have several more who sent us their mails, wanted to participate in live stream or follow on video. The videos will be made available later in the week once we get them from the TV team here at the university. So very warm welcome from my side as well. And let me sort of give you a bit of an idea what we are trying to achieve here, both with ReMeP and at the conference, because there is one thing that is very important. Research meets practice means, we want to connect. The red M connects the researcher and the practitioner, this is not something that will just happen at that conference. So we have a program beyond that conference. I'll come to that later. But it's very important to me to say we are not here for just a one-off conference with a new test drive of a format. We want to really achieve one thing. Everybody in this environment, in particular lawyers, and we have about 70–80% from the legal profession as attendants, should get involved, should try things out hands-on. And we know from the practitioners that they need the feedback. They sometimes need data to do research. They need the experience of a user that applies an application. They need the feedback of what does practice need in order to get on with the research. So that's the things we want to experience. By doing that jointly, by sharing our experience, by sharing our views, we all will get on together. So we have put together a 1.5-day conference. The first half day is focused on information for which providing, so what's out there in the market, who are players, what are technologies, etc. You'll hear from high-level experts from their fields of research. You'll have a panel discussion with practitioners involved. We have at the end of the day a high-level discussion with a pioneer in the area, and a book presentation that rather goes towards the fintech provision. But fintech, law, regtech, all those areas are highly interconnected. So that's very important. Now, legal informatics, Ms. Opitz already mentioned, legal informatics is nothing new. It is nothing new. The applications go back to the 1950s. Yes, there are Italian, some Austrian applications already in the 1950s, applications in the 1960s and ongoing. But what's more important, the objective of lawyers to formalize the law, to have a mathematical correct decision as it was formalized many years, that goes back to the 1500s. So the idea is long out there that the law would be something mathematical. It, of course, does not work that way. If you're a lawyer, you understand it relatively quickly. And those approaches to purely formalize the law did not work at the end of the day. But on the other hand, we see already now there is a lot of repetitive execution of legal processes, and why shouldn't those be formalized? Whether or not a computer gathers data and fills them in a column and then ticks the boxes, or a human being, there isn't much of a difference. Actually, the computer is more stable in its daily performance, it's probably less in error. It doesn't overlook and make other errors. So yes, we'll see a lot of applications. We'll see a disruption in law firms and in other areas of practicing law very soon, very massive, but not on the artificial intelligence level as we all think. It will be rather those tools that is the daily repetition of work. However, that affects probably 40–50% of the work in the law firm, because the lawyers in the law firm are not doing high-end legal thinking 100% of the day. It's rather, in particular, the younger staff, the support staff, that is spending most of the day in this sort of routine work. The routine work will quickly be affected very strongly. Now, that is very important for us to understand when we venture into investing in these areas. If you invest in an application today, you need to think, is it actually in that area, or is it right on the high end, very expensive, but I cannot use it often? So when you, for example, look, I don't mention the name now, but if you look at particular products that are being offered in the market, you are being asked to pay a license fee of 40,000, 50,000 euros a year and an annual fee of an installation fee of 40,000, 50,000 euros and a management fee of 25,000, and you cannot use the software without the software company. You need to upload the data to that company. You'll figure out that there are not many use cases for that, because there are not that many firms that can afford that applications on the legal side. And in the corporate departments, I think it's still also an issue that you need to find your use case to make this sort of investment. On the other hand, there's a lot of free applications. I mentioned one, Community Lawyer is a US application that's sort of a chatbot tool that helps you to put together a form document. You fill in form letters that come very cheaply, right? So look into the market and you will see immediately there are applications that will scale very quick and will be of immediate use. It's rather the mathematical statistical function, of course, at the beginning, and not the high-end AI function. One more thing, probably to the market environment. I have here one chart from Legal Geek, which in the bottom line gives us the various areas into which we categorize the market. The market at the moment is very much driven also in terms of investment and turnover by e-discovery and legal research, that far beyond 70% or so of the market. The other areas are relatively remote and very much split up in various smaller applications that cover one or the other issue. None of those products is integrated along the bottom line. They are all sort of silos in parallel. That is very important to keep in mind, because in my humble opinion, it is relatively unlikely to scale on this silo level. It needs to scale actually on the bottom line. And that is sort of where we think that things will go in the longer run. One more thing here, which gives you an overview. So there are two links. Legal Geek was one. The Tech Index of Stanford Law School lists about 1,200 companies that do legal tech applications. So if you want to look into what is out there, you might have a look at these applications. A very quick sidestep to the Austrian market, if you allow. Austria has been a very early adopter in legal tech. Also, that's probably not that much known, because it's a very early adopter in e-government, e-justice technology. IRIS, which Erich Schweighofer runs every year, is the largest informatics and law conference in Europe, with about 400 participants every year, and has a very strong focus in that market segment, where there's a lot of interest. Just if you don't know, Austrian courts are communicating with lawyers for the last, 15, 20 years by a service that's called web service, where lawyers upload their documents to the courts, and courts download their documents into a sort of mailbox to the law firms, all electronically. We had this sort of discussion, I think, in Germany half a year ago or so, where this service failed. Now in Austria, it's working for many, many years. Likewise, we have the land register electronically for a similar period. The corporate register is electronically for the same sort of period. So all those services are digitalized for many, many, many years. Notarized documents get uploaded for many years in a sort of cloud service that is available to notaries, courts, and lawyers. So the market here is actually well developed on that side, and funnily, more or less not developed on the other side. So legal informatics has not arrived much at universities. You won't find postgraduates, for example, or you won't find dedicated courses in that respect, despite this very strong adoption of e-government and e-justice products. E-justice, for example, the courts are launching a service at the moment where in the courtroom all the files are made available to the participants electronically, and they are displayed on the screen on the wall. So well advanced services which we need to bring over to the private sector as well for many to participate. Now, where does this lead us? The market will evolve. We can see it if we read the newspapers for the very last 2 years. There is at least an awareness. I wouldn't say that there are so many applications that are really running in practice, but there is an awareness of the necessity. But we still need to figure out how does it work? How does it affect our daily lives? How do we bring those applications into our daily lives? Now, who will be the real drivers? In my opinion, corporate departments in large corporates will be the early drivers. The associations of business people will be the drivers. Why? They have the ability to scale. If all the banks say, the Austrian Bankenverband, the Banking Association is, for example, such an institution, if all of they say, we adopt a certain product, they then can afford to develop the necessary tools. One tool, for example, and that's, I think, in my opinion, one of the most prominent examples of why we are in silos. One tool we all need to do this is communication. We need interfaces, right? APIs, as they are called, are necessary to get data from one application to the other. If we want to use and share data and always input the data separately in each occasion or get the output sort of stored somewhere and need to input it separately in your new application, that will not scale, that will not be efficient. So API development will be the very first, most important issue that the market needs to address, and that will definitely not happen in law firms. That will definitely happen in corporate departments, in associations. There is one example of an association that at the moment is very active in digitalizing their tools. That is Eder, International Swap Dealer Association. If you look up Twitter or their website, you will see that there's a lot of activity around there. And this sort of associations, they have the market power, they have the market relevance in market share, that if an application is adopted and endorsed, it will scale. And if such an application is adopted and endorsed and scales and provides the necessary APIs, there will be other applications that then, based on those APIs and the scaling of such an endorsed application, will also scale. And that's how the environment, the market will evolve. And corporate environments will soon be to follow, in my opinion, in particular, and Mrs. Oppis also mentioned that, compliance is easily and best achieved if you have legal tech applications in your environment. Think about a bank. A typical bank problem is that the officer in a branch office is negotiating with the customer. He has his forms, he has his instructions what to do. Sometimes he hasn't read the instructions, sometimes he hasn't probably understood them. He deviates quite often, actually, from the instruction when then doing the individual contract. When we go to court, we very often, in Austria, if you represent a bank, you usually lose because the highest court is the opinion of that the bank customer is always right. We lose very often because of that, right? Because that an officer hasn't complied with its respective obligations. If you have processes that are monitored, and in this banking environment where you have a lot of form documents, that's actually relatively easy to achieve if you do the right legal design thinking. It's also another flash word you should keep in mind. If you do the right legal design thinking, you design the process and the various elements of it, and then of course you can check in that process, compliance-wise, whether or not the officer has done the right thing, or even better, actually the tool doesn't allow him to deviate because the tool already has the compliance implications built in, and those parts of forms that cannot be changed if you implement it on a digitalized way. So where does this lead us? At the end of the day, we will see processes like this evolve on the compliance side, on this organizational association side, and they will lead the market to follow in suit. And in parallel, we will see, of course, those applications that are already out there that focus on a particular simpler process to utilize controls, documents, sort a set of documents, find a clause in an agreement, etc., etc. So there will be an involvement and a development that will kick in, I think, very soon, for the simple reason, which also Mrs. Opitz mentioned, that in the background, the research community has done a lot of work for the last 30, 40 years, and there's a lot of tools available, and now we need to learn about what is out there to understand ourselves, how will this affect our work in the future. Now, one question that is linked to that, and that's probably most important to me, when we organized that conference, we were very keen to bring in as many students as we could on free tickets, because the biggest effect on all of that will be on those people who are coming into the working environment soon. Those who have a job today in the legal environment, they will carry on to do their work. You know, this transformation process will take time. It's not happening from today to tomorrow. But if you're coming in, you'll find it harder in the future to get a place to get educated, because already, you know, firms think about, should we rather invest in technology? If we invest in technology, we probably don't invest that much in people, because technology eats up the budget and does the work. So, you know, if you bring somebody in who doesn't have work to do, you need to think about that. So the working environment will more focus on high-end qualified lawyers. So if you have a good education, a high-end qualified lawyer will always be necessary. The machine will not take over for a long time, if at all, which I don't believe. But there will be a new opportunity for those people who focus on, for example, legal design thinking, on how is a legal process digitalized, how is it monitored, how is it further developed, what do you do with the data? Many of the applications I see at the moment, or we are working on at the moment, improve, also that was mentioned, improve the quality, right? So if you have today a team of, I don't know, 10 or so people monitor a set of, let's say, 20, 30,000 lease agreements, if you support those people with technology, they will increase in quality. The output of that system will be so significant that those 10 people will need more support to actually handle the issues, right? They will find more issues to deal with than they would have had a chance to find out if that technology would not have been used and applied. So it is not automatically that those that have a job today will be affected. I actually am not a strong believer in that. But those who come in the future will have to adopt to it, our education will have to adopt to it, and lawyers will have to understand how legal technology tools are being applied. That is one of the key issues of our conference. So tomorrow, please bring your device, bring your computer, because you do it practically. We will have 80-minute sessions where you need to do legal tech work, where you work yourself and figure out how logical decision-making works. How is an algorithm working that leads you to a decision or helps you to find something, or how an intelligent research tool works, how is it, you know, in multilingual environments or multi-jurisdictional environments, how do you analyze contracts? All those things you're going to experience. I think that's the important thing, because that is what you will have to learn in future at university. Your employer will not be able to teach you that, because your employer will buy software and then apply it, but it will not, you know, not be developer, it's the user. So you will come in and you will have to work in an environment, and that's why I address in particular the young people, the students, to think about that. Get a bit of legal education. If you're here at the Wirtschaftsuniversität Vienna, there is an informatics faculty, right? I'm not sure whether you're allowed or not, but if you're not allowed, just drop in. Just drop in and hear about principles of programming. I tell you something, every lawyer can program, you just don't know it. Every lawyer can program. I had a lecture at Business University earlier this year with Professor Winner for 2 days. We spent a half day on legal logic and flow charting of a legal problem. We used an environment called Flowgorithm, which is executable, flow charting. we had a homework assigned to they were master students, so of course more educated people. We had a homework assigned, and I think all the students delivered a result, a positive result. All the codes work, right? Of course, you're not programming complicated interfaces and what, but they can logically assemble and analyze a legal problem and show what the decision process is, and can transform that into a form of, let's say, chatbot that answers a question of whether or not, in our case, general terms and conditions of a contract are valid or not, right? And Flugger written by the hand produces code in 16 different formats, so Java, JavaScript, Python, C++, whatever. Just not Prolog, unfortunately, but yeah. So it produces code. So in a way, lawyers can code. Also, that is far-fetched. I'm aware of that. So, you know, the point is, get into it. Law and logic, there's a link. There are great lectures on that. Get into a lecture of juristische Methodenlehre, the principles of law, where you read and learn about logic. If you know about law and logic, the logic leads you to the coding, right? Coding is, as also has been mentioned, an issue of zeros, ones, or, and nor, right? If you have those 5 operations, you understand the basic principles. And of course, Professor Kowalski and Professor Mattes will explain that it's a bit more complicated, but you know, that's where you start off. That's where you start off. And Armin Cho is sitting here where I learned my basic programming, and we'll speak later. And he's an excellent teacher. So speak to him in the break, and you go away and code. So let me come towards the thing that is most important. Let me speak. So this is the idea of interaction between law and code. There's the logic in between. Let me get to the most important thing, and that is what do you expect? We will have keynotes from Professor Kowalski and Professor Mattes. I will introduce them a bit later in more detail, but Professor Kowalski is a godfather, I would say, of logic programming. When I was studying and at the university, Armin Cho taught us Prolog, logic programming, Lisp, Prolog. I mainly did Prolog. I had to do my master in Prolog, and that was always referred to as Edinburgh Prolog. And I think Professor Kowalski had a lot to do with Edinburgh Prolog and the compiler and the interpreter in developing those tools. Professor Mattes is very well known for his active research in legal informatics. He has a number of tools. He will be available tomorrow also in one of those sessions, so please take that opportunity to go to that session. And actually, the way we have structured it, you are supposed to go to that session anyway. Go to that session and hear about, digital tools, IT tools to analyze contracts. How do you get information out of a contract, and how do you deal with that sort of information? We have here, the picture is Jelena, but I'll speak. Jelena is coming. I'm speaking in the timely order, Jelena, so you're last but not least. So the next thing is actually our panel. Our panel will discuss the practical implication of law and informatics and where it's going to go in the future. Ms. Malmüller, Dr. Malmüller will moderate our panel. She is an expert long time with the Computer Association and also with in the publishing field of informatics and law. Mr. Sans de Lama is from LexisNexis, one of the 2 large companies in Austria, and LexisNexis also internationally, of course, in legal legal research. Armin Cho, I mentioned already, professor at the University of Informatics here in Vienna, and a great expert and long established and great teacher. I know from my personal experience. Mr. Harashta is a professor from the Masaryk University in Brno on informatics, also very much involved with tools. He also had sent us a tool which we would have liked to present tomorrow, but time's not allowing, and he needs to go back to the university today, where he needs to teach tomorrow. And Professor Winner here from the University, of the Business University from the legal faculty, who has, of course, a lot of insight in legal education in Austria and the possible application of those tools. Jonathan Eskin is then coming with a sort of interview format. I will not reveal too much about Jonathan because you need to learn that in the interview, but I can tell you that will be very interesting. And then we have Jelena Madia, who is Chief Counsel with the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, who is also very active in Central and Eastern Europe, supporting blockchain and other applications. Jelena has just edited a book on fintech, regtech applications. We'll speak to that at the evening reception and do a presentation on her book. And I would not like you to miss that because that will be great. And I know that because Jelena and I have worked together in the same firm for some time. Yes, and then the topics for tomorrow. The topics for tomorrow, we have a format. We have 3 sessions in the morning. You have free choice where you go. We have the Future of Document Assembly by Mr. Langthaler from the Austrian Informatics Center, who also operate most of the e-government, e-justice applications the Austrian government runs. We have an issue of secure systems. I think, in particular, law firms and lawyers completely underestimate the security issue. It actually is a nightmare that lawyers communicate by email and WhatsApp and I don't know what. And that corporate departments in firms do the same, or in governments, right? It is just not state of the art, and tomorrow we'll hear a bit about what the issues are. But if you speak about legal tech, it's impossible that you not think about legal IT security. This goes hand in hand. The more applications are out there, the more you need to think about how do you secure your communication, your data, and you all know there are now substantial fines in the context of GDPR, but also there's the NIS directive, which is affecting one or the other infrastructure provider. I'll do, the coding 101 actually will minimize. I'll do a very, very short slot in that session, 5 or 10 minutes. It's just, time doesn't allow it that we cover that. What we'll do is we'll do a free session of coding 101 within the next 2 or so months in a separate setup. We already are in discussions with a couple of sponsors who would like to support that, but it is in the format we are running here actually not possible. And then we have Francesco Sorvano from the University in Bologna, who will explain you algorithm decision making. He just back from Stanford, where he presented the same topic at the Codex Center, so you get something very first-hand, very interesting, one of those disruptive ideas of the future that probably will not kick in tomorrow, but they are coming in one way or the other, also to the workplace. And then we have 3 other workshops, those 3 on the bottom line, which are repeated 3 times. And we have grouped you. If you turn your pass, you'll see a color that shows you where you are attending the 3 workshops. So each of you will have the opportunity to do each of the 3 workshops here. And those 3 workshops will give you hands-on experience. We have the first workshop with Dr. Schäfbeck, Mr. Geiger from LexisNexis, that deals with research technology on a higher level, I would say. You know, how do you get out things in research in a better, higher qualified way? How is it ranked in a better way? How you find from the results of your research a link to something that is related, important, related to that topic, but you haven't thought of. How is it working across languages, across jurisdictions, all right? The second workshop is Professor Mattes is there, and Christian Sakida, who is here. There are 2 applications. The University of Munich shows an application regarding the application of general terms and conditions, and how, you know, do you find out, for example, how they're valid or not, or what do these provisions contain. Christian Sakida is presenting Lynx. Christian Sakida is from Open Laws. I'm involved with that company. Open Laws is probably known to most of the Austrians here. If you have the RIS app on your handy, then you use an Open Laws product. There are 50,000 users, but Christian at the moment is working on researching Lynx that is dealing with how do you get legal information on a knowledge graph? How can you abstract legal information from a contract, make it searchable, and link it, for example, to the research tools Open Laws is already using? And we have, most important, also a tool I had the pleasure already to experience myself. That's called NAI from the University of Luxembourg. It is about automated reasoning. Tomo Lieber is here. Yes, he, together with Teresa Novotná, will give you a presentation on that. And I tell you, you need to focus and get your brain together, because that is a very tough, interesting session, but you need to be focused to follow. And you do it yourself. You will yourself do automated reasoning. You work with a text and come to a result. I'm convinced you will enjoy that very much. And once you've done that, you know where the future is. So that is what we have in mind. Let me come to an end so that I have also time to introduce the next speaker. So we have a mission. ReMeP is not a one-off exercise. Our mission is to link research and practitioners, to build a bridge, to be an open environment, to be a basis where things are shared, where experience is shared, where your sorrows and concerns are shared, where people, show what they are working on, where others say, well, I could have an interest, a platform where code might be made available, others work on and put it back in again. What we want to do is we want to open up the community. We want to bring the community closer together. And I see already now from the feedback I have that this is well accepted. We have a couple of associations who have addressed us now in the preparation of the conference to get more involved next year, like the Association of Business Lawyers and others. And I'm happy to open up the platform for this sort of involvement. The more universities, the more associations, the more practitioners and researchers get involved, the better the exchange of information will be, the quicker we'll get on and make this an open platform. And as Mrs. Oppitz said, at the end of the day, the applications need to be affordable and available, right? If they exist in a silo in the back of a law firm's pocket, they don't get applicable. They will not scale either, so nobody will know about them. But if it should be workable, they need to be affordable and available. And I'm quite sure this is possible because there already now is a number, and if you're interested, get in touch. There's already now a number of applications out there you could use, like Flogorithm, for example, that are freely available. All right? You can use that for training. You can use that for understanding how law and logic and coding gets together. But there are many other applications. So that's important to me. I hope it's important to you. I hope you join into that community. That's what I already said. We want to be very hands-on. That is very important, so get involved and tell us what you experience. Send us messages and information of tools. We'll get them into our platform and publish it and pass it on. And as I said, we're very open for participation. So at the very end of my presentation, I need, of course, to thank everybody who helped to put this together. Number one and most important is the Business University, Professor Carlsen, Professor Winner, and Ms. Oppitz, who support us, because you gave us the room, you gave us the opportunity, you gave us gave me at least the opportunity to work with a masterclass, and also that was a great experience, because that is the step forward one needs to understand how to present things and how to figure out the right thing. I need to thank the city of Vienna, who not only supported us with some money, but also does this reception tonight. So the business agency and the city together have been a great supporter. I need to thank our speakers who make their time available freely. That is great, and who share their knowledge. And of course, I need to thank our sponsors and partners. In particular, also LexisNexis, who supported us significantly and also shares know-how, and all the other partners I've listed down here. So also that is a big thank you to all of that. And then last but not least, I need to thank the team of 5 people, Sabrina, Susie, Susanna, and the others. There are not that many in here. Evelyn they're all out there. But most of them you see wear their shirts. So those ladies have worked a lot over the last couple of weeks and months, honestly, to put this together. I must honestly say it was a big challenge actually to put together the workshops, because we had so many options and needed to figure out how to do this best. That took us a while. That's why we published also the workshops very, very late. I'm aware of that. We have been pretty early out there with our speakers, but pretty late with our workshops. But that was a big challenge. We learned, I think, a lot for next year, but the team was a great support on that. So with that, I end. Here's our contact information. Please get in touch. Very important to be linked up to you. Thank you very much. So without a break, I would like to move on and ask Professor Kowalski for his address. Professor Kowalski is a professor emeritus from the Imperial College in London. He studied at the University of Chicago, the University of Bridgeport. He had been at Stanford University, the University of Warsaw, and I mentioned already the University of Edinburgh. Edinburgh Prologue is always ringing back in my mind. In Edinburgh, where he finished his PD. Mr. Kowalski's research had been in automated theorem proving, leading development on logic programming. Prolog is a logic programming language, a forced level language, which is very different from other programming languages. So if you ever would like to try it, you should use a bit of time to get into it. It's not comparable to languages like Java, JavaScript, or things like that. Very interesting and very ideal to express logic expressions. Professor Kowalski wrote a book in 2011 on computational logic and human thinking. That is also sort of, I think, part of his presentation here to us. And he's very much has been involved in the issues of event calculus, legal reasoning, abductive reasoning, and argumentation. He's currently also working on similar research projects. I hope he will enlighten us on that in his presentation, and is very active in developing also programming languages that help to express this sort of intelligence. Professor Kowalski is a fellow of the Association of the Advancements of Artificial Intelligence, of the European Association for Artificial Intelligence, the Association for Computer Machinery. That's one thing I wanted to mention during my presentation. Probably I added here. We are not a scientific conference, but we have speakers with a high-level scientific background. Right? We have speakers with a high-level scientific background who are able to explain scientific things for ordinary people. That is why I have invited Professor Kowalski, and very much looking forward to his presentation, and also Professor Mattes, because I think we'll all learn a lot today.